Guys, we have today the world famous Mike Ferry, and it's such an honor to really have him with us. For some of you, Generation Z, and I'm not talking bad about Generation Z. For people who don't know who Mike Ferry is, he has trained the best real estate agents in the world for the last 40 years, and he has made more millionaires in this business than anybody else. When you go to a Mike Ferry seminar in Vegas, you'll see there's 5,000 people there, and they're all 5,000 agents, and they're all dressed like rock stars. Well, one of the reasons is because if you dress bad for this, Mike will actually call you out on stage, and you don't want to be that person. Uh, but there's 5,000 people there, so there's 50 rows of 100 people each. Okay, in each row, so there's 50 rows of 100 people. The first two rows are all agents that make $1 to $4 million a year. So let me repeat that. They're all agents that make $1 to $4 million a year. So you have 200 agents there that at least do that. And one of the reasons why we love helping, subsidizing our agents to go to this training is because finally they can see what will happen when they apply the Mike Ferry system. They will see the end results of it, and they can see the best agents in the world role play too. So that is huge. He has made a tremendous difference in our company. Miss Jackie Leonard, I just want to give her a quick shout out and tell her for her to get better. But Jackie Leonard is an awesome agent we have, Mike. And 4 years ago, she doesn't mind me sharing this story, but 4 years ago, she was thinking about getting out of the business. She was doing probably like 15, 16 transactions a year. Last year, she did 100 transactions with a much higher sales price. So that's huge. Or we have this other agent, Denzel Clemens. He's a definition of a driver like you. He doesn't, kind of keeps quiet, but is very driven. But he was a brand new agent. He had only done one transaction. And we took him, we helped pay for him to go to your event in Vegas. And I think that helped him put everything together. And last year he closed 40. So that's another huge success story. And then also, because of you, our company has the highest per agent productivity in the market by far. So without any further ado, I just want to give a big warm welcome for Mike Ferry. Let's go clap, guys. Woo! Yeah, Big Mike.
Thank you, Alex. That's very kind, and I appreciate those kind words. Every time I hear somebody introduce me and say I've been doing this for in excess of 40 years, which is now, I'm in my 46th year of doing seminars for real estate people. It reminds me that this business has changed dramatically, but it has not changed at all. It has changed dramatically because of technology and the different practices we put in play, but it hasn't changed at all because there's certain basic concepts in running a business that if they're not followed, that business will not succeed at the level that it could. And we're going to look at that because one of those aspects of what a business has to do, an individual in real estate is a separate business, is of course business planning, goal setting. I wish all of you could see, but on my right, here in my office in Las Vegas on the wall, I have a framed record, and the record is called The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. He gave me that record in, I think it was 1966. He signed the record because it was a very important part of my life and a part of his. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard Earl Nightingale's message, The Strangest Secret. And in that record, he talks about the fact that we become what we think about most of the time. Or in essence, if we have a goal, if we have a plan, if we have something we're trying to accomplish and is foremost in our minds, the odds of us achieving it are improved dramatically. So we're going to look at that whole aspect of a business plan as being something that is vitally, critically important. Now, I want to share with you, Alex, we sent you a copy of a little 6-page business plan to distribute to the agents. And it's interesting, it's only 6 pages, guys and gals, because I'm 75 years old and my eyesight isn't good. So it's big print, okay? This could easily be 3 pages. One of my competitors, I just downloaded one of my competitors' business plans, Alex and Steph, and it was 78 pages long, the business plan for the agent. Then I downloaded a second one that was 86 pages long. I don't think any of us are going to take the time to do something like that. We have to have a plan. It has to be simple. It has to be straightforward. It has to be doable, and it has to help us accomplish the goals we've set. So there's something that's very important here, Alex. When we're done today, I'm going to have Lori forward you the 10 pages of notes that I'm going to be working from. Obviously, if your agents want to take notes, please do. If they want to wait, I'll forward this to Alex and he can forward to any of the agents everything that I see in my notes on business planning. We're not going to cover all of it. We're going to cover the highlights, the most important points, to make this not only not a difficult and not easy, but a very doable plan for everybody that's listening in. I wrote the following. A business plan is a roadmap from point A to point B. It's a working document that changes as the year progresses. Now, I think all of us know if I'm sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, and I decide to drive from Atlanta to Dallas, Texas, I'm not going to go through Buffalo, New York. That would make no sense.
Right.
If I'm on an airplane flying from LA to Dallas, I don't want to fly over Denver. That would make no sense. A business plan is a map, is all it is. It's step A, step B, step C, D, E, F, and G. My mentor, Gunther Kloss, has a great line, Alex, and I don't think I've shared this with you guys, but he used to always say that, you know, your business plan is plan A. But if plan A doesn't work, there's 25 more letters in the alphabet that you can get to work with. So we never want to give up on this roadmap or this plan until we absolutely cannot accomplish what we've set out to accomplish. I call it a working document because, as your agents can see, but not very well, of course, but all over my notes are handwritten notes. And a business plan is something that you're going to work on every month. You're going to look at it every month. The management team is going to be working with you to make sure that the plan is doable and effective and it's something you can follow. A business plan should revolve around 4 different factors. Obviously, A is a production goal. Alex, you and I have talked, Shep, you and I have talked about the fact that a production goal is the number of transactions the agent is going to close. A lot of people look at a production goal as being gross sales. That doesn't even make sense, okay? Or gross income. I got an email from one of our agents on the West Coast last night. He listed a $27.5 million estate up in Lake Tahoe, California. And from the day he listed it to yesterday when it closed was 116 days. He got a 4% commission on that transaction, which was $1.1 million. Wow. Needless to say, this agent is a happy agent today, okay? But if we measured by gross income, it would really not be fair to those of us that sell normal houses where a commission check could be $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So we measure the roadmap by transaction count. The second part of a business plan revolves around skill development, and we're going to spend some time on that in a few minutes. The third part of a plan revolves around the numbers that are required to make it happen, because business, and I know most agents don't like to hear this, business revolves around numbers. Selling real estate is a business, and therefore selling real estate revolves around numbers. And then, of course, the fourth part of the plan is creating the lead generation portion of how you're going to accomplish the goal you set. In a couple of weeks, I'm doing a fun little webinar, and it's going to be 4 hours, and your agents are invited to attend, of course. And I want everybody to understand, because of Alex and Shep, for the next 12 months, everything that we do as a company to assist agents, all of our seminars, all of our workshops, all of our retreats, your agents will always be able to buy them at 50% discount because of the relationship I have with Alex and Shep. So make sure you say thank you to the bosses for that particular thought. So creating a lead generation plan is a very important part. So what I'd like to do first is this. I'd like to ask everybody to realistically take their pen, a piece of paper, and write down the number of transactions they want to close in 2021. How many transactions do you want to close in 2021? What is a realistic and fair number for each of you? Let's say this year you closed 12 and you maybe set a goal to close 24. Maybe you close 24 and you want to go to 35. What is that number? Okay, that's very important that you establish what that number is. That's the goal. Below that goal, Alex, I want everybody to write down how many of the goal will be achieved through their database, their past clients and centers of influence.
Okay.
So let's say that the goal is 35 for the year, and that I can say to myself, based on my working with my database, I should be able to get 10 of my 35 from my database. So I have the number 35, below it the number 10.
Okay.
Subtract the 10 from 35, and your third number is number 25. That's how many transactions that you are committing to create during the calendar year 2021. So the production goal is twofold. How many transactions do I want to do? How many will come from the database? And then how many do I have to create? Which is why the skills, the numbers, and your lead generation plan are so important. So I'm going to read a quick little thought to everybody. And then again, everything that I'm working from, I'll send to Alex as soon as we're done with this webinar today, and he can redistribute it to all of you. I wrote down, if we look at the skills required to build a predictable business, we have to evaluate both the strengths we have and the weaknesses we have in terms of skills. So one of the things that I've done for years is I've asked agents to evaluate as honestly as possible the strength of their skills, the strength of time management, setting a schedule, the strength of lead generation, which is prospecting, the strength of developing and working and building business from your database, the strength of obviously following up on the leads that you have generated and have, the strength of pre-qualifying both a buyer and a seller, the strength of the listing presentation you make, the strength of how well you can show property and get a buyer to sign a contract, the strength of handling the objections that are going to come up as you're talking to buyers and sellers, the strength of closing and negotiating, and then the strength of handling the administrative portion of the transaction. So Alex, for many, many years, when I do a seminar, I would ask everybody in the audience to write down 1 through 10. And then I would list those 10 skills. And then I would say, now we're going to stop. And I want everybody on a scale from 1 to 10 to honestly evaluate every one of those skills. The maximum you could score would be 100. So I'm doing a seminar in Seattle, Washington a couple of years ago. We had 400 people in the room. We did the skills evaluation. I had everybody take a moment, evaluate themselves, and then total up their score. And then I said, jokingly, did anybody have a perfect score? And one lady raised her hand. And I said, ma'am, please stand up. What did you score? She said, I scored 100. I said, I have never seen an agent score a perfect score. Congratulations. I asked everybody to give her a big round of applause. And then, this was in the month of October. I said, how many transactions have you done this year so far? She said 3. I said, wait a minute. Something is wrong here. You are a perfect 100 in terms of your skills, and you've only done 3 deals for the year. Why? Listen to what she said. I know what to do. I just choose not to do it.
That's crazy.
So what we have to look at in terms of skill development to achieve the plan we've set is to be totally 100% honest with yourself as to your skills. And most business plans do not talk about skills. Mike Ferry's business plan talks about skills because the skills are the foundation that we're going to lay. It's the foundation of the house we're going to build. It's the foundation of the building that we're going to construct if we want to achieve the goal of making that building finished, and complete. So I'm going to ask everybody to take the time, sometime in the next 24 hours, once you set the number goal, to be as honest as you can possibly be in relationship to the skills that you've set and skills that you have to develop. Be honest. Be honest. Be honest. Okay. And the hardest part about that is, I did 20 deals last year. I'm a pretty hot sales guy. I'm number 3 in the office. I don't need all this nonsense. Wait a minute. 20 deals is good. 40 is better.
That's right.
60 is even better, and 100 is great. So we need to remove the ego from the skills portion of this business plan, because it's very common that the ego gets in the way. But I also mentioned that in a business plan, part 3 is revolving around the numbers. And I've written down a series of points. And again, I'll send these to Alex so he can distribute them to you. The hardest part of numbers is getting agents to track what they do. And I know for the 3 or 4 of you that run the company, trying to get agents to track what they do is sometimes almost impossible. So I worked for a broker who was very much like Alex, and that's why I have so much respect for Alex. My broker was a guy named Pat McVeigh, big, tall, tough Irish guy. And he would just as soon punch you in the nose as say hello. Okay. I mean, this guy, like Alex, a former, he was a Marine, Alex. So he was a tough guy like yourself. And he didn't put up with any nonsense from any of us. So 1970, sounds bizarre, but if he said, I want you to go knock on doors, if you didn't go knock on doors, he would just pick you up by the collar and throw you out of the office. Okay. Because he had strict standards that he wanted us to follow. One of the standards we had was we had to track our numbers. So every day, at the end of the day, we had to submit to Patrick, how many hours did we prospect? How many contacts did we make? How many leads did we generate? And how many appointments did we go on? And then once a week, Patrick would sit down with us and go through our numbers, because the numbers never lie. Now, sometimes, don't get mad at me, the people lie, but the numbers don't lie, okay? Sometimes agents fudge a little bit on their numbers. So I'm going to share with you a series of thoughts regarding numbers in relationship to your plan. I wrote down first, it's okay if your number's challenged. It's okay. If you just track what you do day in and day out, for 45 to 60 days, they will start to make very good sense to you. The fastest way to learn who you are as a salesperson, strengths and weaknesses, your levels of efficiencies, and what it takes to succeed is to track your numbers. I'll give you an example. I have a real estate sales training and coaching company. Every day at 5 o'clock, I get 4 sets of numbers from my company. How many sales we had that day, how much income we created, how many people joined our coaching, and how many people are in coaching at that given time. I get those numbers every day. And then, as I think most of you can see, I can make my decisions as to what I'm going to do based upon the numbers that I see. I wrote the following. When you track your numbers every day and you learn to understand them, and this is a critical point on numbers, the numbers will help you offset some of the emotional responses that real estate creates. Real estate is an emotional business, not only for the buyer and the seller, but for the agents. So, you walk in the office, you're all excited. You took a great listing the night before. You walk in, you're waving your listing up and down. Look at this listing I got. I'm so excited. And one of the agents mumbles, you're kidding. That thing will never sell. And we go from an immediate high to flat on the ground in a nanosecond. It's the nature of real estate. The most emotional moment is not when they sign a contract, it's when the transaction closes, because that's when the jubilation takes place. The only way to stop the emotional response is to look at your numbers. There's one particular man that I studied for 20 years. And this man's name was Jack Welch, who most of you know was the chairman of GE Corporation. And if you read any of the books on Jack Welch, everything was based on numbers. So I wrote this thought down. When you track your numbers each day, the results will help you make the necessary adjustments to your plan, your schedules, and your skill.
Okay.
I started with saying that it's a working document. We're just completing, Alex, at this time, our company business plan for 2021. It's going to be about 5 pages long. It's going to have different things we're trying to accomplish. And I will, by the end of June, halfway through the year, I'll have scribbled notes all over that plan, adjustments I've made, changes I've decided to put out into the company, etc. Okay. So the biggest thing about numbers is increasing efficiency. I'm going to ask everybody to listen carefully. If an agent goes on 100 listing presentations in the course of a year, according to NAR, which in most cases stands for non-active realtors,
That's
because most agents are not very active, unfortunately. According to NAR, Alex, 100 presentations results in 20 listings taken that sell. So the batting average is 200. Now, a lot of agents say, man, 20 listings, I'm happy with that. But you went on 100 presentations. And let's say your average commission is $6,000. Well, you make 120,000, which is a good standard of living from any perspective. If you really understand your numbers, then you look at going on 100 presentations and you develop your skills and you track everything you do. I will tell you, if you follow what I teach, instead of taking 20 that close and sell, you'll take 100, or excuse me, you'll take 70 that close and sell. So look at the difference. Each agent went on 100 presentations. One takes 20, one takes 70. Commissions of 6,000. One makes 120,000, one makes 420,000. The difference is efficiency. If you're going on presentations and you're not getting contracts signed, it means you probably have not pre-qualified. It means you probably did not have a strong presentation. It means you probably were not able to handle the objections they gave. These are changeable skills that we can develop over the course of the next few months. So if we really say to ourselves, I've got a goal to do 36. I know I can get 10 from my database. I have to create 25. Which skills do I have to improve upon to get those 25 transactions? And what numbers will support those? How many hours a day do I have to prospect? Okay, so Alex, we know, because we've been doing coaching now for 33 years for real estate people, an agent that really does put their head on straight and prospect a couple hours a day is generally going to talk to 10 people per hour. All right, if my goal is to talk to 25 people a day, 2.5 hours of prospecting. Okay, these are numbers that I can attain.
Hey,
So
Mike, I want to say real quickly for the younger people on this call, one of the things you get when you go to a Mike Ferry seminar is you'll see agents up on stage that make $3 or $4 million a year. So you're thinking, man, that guy's pulling in $3 or $4 million a year. You know, he's probably not as prospecting as hard. It was amazing is that $3 or $4 million agents, they're prospecting, I think, even harder. It's like in their system. It's a crazy, like you'd think like after a couple million, you'd be like, well, you know, man, you know, I'm going to live kind of like the good life. It's not like, I mean, it's like in their DNA, you know, it's a habit they form.
it's interesting, Alex, that you have noticed that, because if I take, we have several thousand agents in coaching at all times, and I take the top 500. And the top 500 average about 90 transactions a year closed. And the sales prices vary depending on where they live, of course. But they're making any place from 750 to up to 5 to 5.5 million, depending on their sales price. Every one of them prospects every day. And in most cases, they prospect any place from 1 to 2.5 hours per day. So a lot of people think that as I become more experienced, I don't have to prospect as much. So if we look at a gal up in Michigan, Lucy Ham, she's been a client of mine for 33 years. She is 70 years old. She does 275 transactions a year without a team. Her team is her son, who is a showing agent. His name is Justin, brilliant young guy. He does about 35 deals a year out of the 275. Lucy has 7,000 names in her database. 5 days a week, she talks to 25 people a day. It takes her about 3 hours, 5 days a week. So a lot of people, like you said, Alex, think that once you achieve a certain status level, you don't have to prospect. Only way to maintain that status is to talk to people. So let's take a different approach. We know that you have to have a part 4, which is a lead generation plan. For all of you folks, if you go to my website, under my reports section, I have a report I wrote called 61 Methods of Getting a Listing. And I've identified 61 different prospecting techniques an agent could use. 20 of them, there's a star next to the number, which is the 20 that I recommend an agent use. Because if they use those 20, they're going to succeed. But until they track their numbers, it really doesn't make any difference in terms of what they're doing. So I'm going to send to Alex 10 pages of notes on business planning. Hopefully, Alex, they will all ask you for a copy and we can make the thing even better for all of them. So here's what I want to do now. This little business plan that we put together, and this was put together in 1985. I was doing a management retreat in Newport Beach, California. We had several hundred people like Alex and Shep in that meeting. I asked them, what problems do you have with agents? And they all said the same thing. They don't have any goals. They don't have any plans. We created the business plan. The business plan part 1 is simply a recap of your numbers from 2020. How much did you get paid? How much were your business expenses? How many deals did you close? How many appointments, etc. But there is one number, Alex, that is probably the most important to look at. We ask you to be very honest and answer how many days did you work in the calendar year 2020. Now, with COVID in play and the fact that many agents virtually stopped working when the government shut down the country on March 17th and never came back to work, we know that the days worked becomes a vitally important part of this business. I would guesstimate that about 65 to 70% of the people that we work with and coach from March through December had the biggest production months of their entire career. Everybody says, why? Because the majority of agents stopped working. They just didn't work. And the fear that we all experienced with COVID was very real. However, anybody that followed the protocols that were in place was probably going to be okay and safe. And businesses still had to be done because listings were still being taken every day during this year. Sales were being made. In fact, the number of sales was record setting in most parts of the country. So I want everybody to be honest about the number of days that they worked and the number of days they're going to work in 2021. The government says there's 265 work days in a year. 265 work days in a year. Retail stores are open probably 364. They have to be open that much just to make a living. And of course, with the COVID situation, they were closed down quite often. So the days invested in the business is vitally important. So part 1 is just a recap of your numbers. Part 2 of our plan is just your goals. What is your income goal, closed deal goal? How many appointments do you want to go on? How many days are you going to work? But the real key to our business plan, Alex, is to look at what we call the daily schedule, which is probably the most important part of the plan. If we look at what we have to do to accomplish taking a listing or making a sale, we look at the fact that in the course of a day, we have to do some administration work on our existing transactions. Even when there's a transaction coordinator, a great loan representative representing our buyers, we still have to pay attention to our transactions. So I'm going to say to your agents, we have a schedule. Let's make a mock-up schedule of what is a perfect day. And I'm going to spend 30 to 40 minutes on admin. When are you going to do it? I'm going to spend 1 to 2 hours on prospecting. When do you want to do it? I'm going to spend probably 30 minutes doing lead follow-up to all the leads that I'm generating. When do you want to do it? Preparation for listing appointments, which includes the pre-qualifying process and putting the pre-listing package together. When do you want to do it? So what I want everybody to do is take a pencil and make a mock-up schedule of what they think will help them achieve the goals they've set. And then what I want them to do is take that schedule and follow it from now until, say, December 20th, and make adjustments to the schedule as they go. Because we want to see where the distractions are, where they get off track, what they're supposed to do versus what they have actually done. So the schedule is a very vitally important part of the plan. The last part of the plan is the fun part, challenges and solutions. Okay, what challenges is the agent going to face? Let's be honest. And let's face it, you might write down number one, the home isolation of COVID is a challenge. How do you overcome that challenge? Okay, are you going to become even better at making a Zoom presentation to a seller? Are you going to become even better at showing property to a buyer, okay, virtually instead of in person? If you're going to show property in person and you're going to do it live, have you got all the protocols set up? Have you got the sanitizer there? Have you got the mask for the buyer to wear if they don't have their own? Some of you will furnish little booties, little gloves to wear, telling your buyer not to touch anything in the house. Real estate business can be done in the worst of cases and worst of times, because the need for people to buy never goes away, and the need for people to sell never goes away. So we have to look at the challenges that we face. Let's say that an agent writes down, my biggest challenge is distractions. So I'm going to say, good, what are the distractions? What gets in the way? What is stopping you from following your schedule? Okay. My biggest challenge is prospecting. Well, let's look at why. Okay, what about the prospecting part is a big concern to you? Because if prospecting is a challenge, there's very little chance of achieving the goal you set. So I think for 99% of us, Alex, within the company, we could complete this plan probably in less than 30 minutes. And once we have...
Mike, what about if your biggest distraction is your wife? Is there a script for that? I just don't...
Yes, it goes back to prospecting to find a new wife. Just kidding.
Oh. Ouch. I'm going to get in trouble for that one. All right, keep going. We're good.
But
That's
usually
good.
In real estate, the wives are the most successful people as agents, so the distraction is the husband. Now we have turnabout is fair play. But I think what we do, Alex, is we just have to understand that the simplicity, what we've been discussing now for almost 40 minutes, is the name of the game. And to spend, countless hours and days completing something as simple as, what do you want to accomplish? How many deals do you want to do? How many listings do you want to take? How many buyer controlled sales? Okay. Where are they going to come from? When we look at the simplicity, I think we can all score at a much higher level. Pat McVeigh, my first broker, we never had the type of a plan. The plan we had was 3x5 cards. We would write down the goal, how many listings, how many buyer controlled sales, and how much money. He made us carry it in our pocket, in our purse, in our wallet. We had to look at it all the time. We were adjusting them all the time. But it all came back to what Earl Nightingale said to us back in the early 50s and 60s. We become what we think about most of the time. So if we have a plan and we look at it, we read it, we challenge ourselves to follow it, we allow the management of the company to hold us accountable to it, it's very doable. And it should be a record setting year for everybody in the company in 2021. So I'm also, Alex, if I may, I'd like to give everybody my email address very quickly, if I may.
Mhm.
My email address is very simple, mike.ferry, mike.ferry at mikeferry.com. If you have questions from anything we've discussed this morning, and it's early afternoon for you folks right now, if you have any questions at all, type them up, send them to me. I usually can answer them within a few hours. At the latest, I'll answer them tonight. Many times on a webinar, people are a little uncomfortable asking questions. And if you want to type a question into the chat box, feel free to do that. But if not, send me a question. Let's see if we can help you solve the problem and get the plan done. So 2 things. All of you should have a copy of the outline of the business plan. After we're finished in a few minutes, I'll send to Alex all of my pages of notes on planning and what needs to be addressed. And then between Alex and Shep and the entire company, all of us should have a record-setting 2021. So any comments, any questions, Alex, from any of you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Katie, like, go ahead and like unmute the panelists, and then guys, please. This is the Michael Jordan of real estate. Please ask any questions. This is it's very rare that we get to have like a one-on-one time with this. But I have a good question for you, Mike. So, and I don't think either one of us are wrong, but Chip and me have 2 totally different goal-setting styles. So what I do is I choose like a really high number, ridiculous number. I have that mentality where what's that saying? You shoot for the moon, and if you don't make it, you land on the stars. And Shep has more like, well, I want to kind of actually achieve the goal. So I want to be able to like check it off. So I go shoot for the moon and land on the stars. And Shep is just like, so you'll like, I'll say how many transactions I want to do. If like in the old days, I'll say 200. Well, when I might actually get to 60, where Shep is like, well, I'm going to maybe shoot for 80, 90 and try to get it. So which way do you go with, which way do you like? If you want to tell me I'm awesome in that one, I totally understand.
I like both of them because both of them can be accomplished. See, there's nothing, the personality of the individual determines the answer to the question, okay? For example, I am like Alex. I shoot for goals that are really high. My wife, who is my business partner, who's very analytical, is going to have goals below mine because she wants to accomplish those to develop and build the confidence of the entire company. So there's nothing wrong with either one. In fact, the truth is, I think for all of your agents, the personality style differences between Alex and Shep are important because they balance each other out in terms of what they teach you, what they ask you to do. So I think both of you are right. It depends on the personality of the individual. I will say to you though, Alex, often a new licensee, I'll say how many transactions you want to do your first year. I want to do 100. I say, no, do not even start down that path, okay? Because the maturity, the strength of the skills, the learning process, the learning curve, you know, to get to those numbers are important. But there's nothing wrong with stretching what you're trying to accomplish, and there's nothing wrong in being realistic. So it's not an evasive answer, it's an honest answer that both ways of looking at are very important.
Personality style, Mike. Yeah, that's good observation. It's personality. Yeah.
Mike,
Say
I
that
have a question.
Please.
So, and you kind of addressed this in a seminar a couple of years ago, last year, I believe it was. But one of the objections was well, hey, Mike, you've done this for 40 years. You're not up to date on what seller objections are now and how the real estate market has changed. And one of the things that you did was you asked anybody that was in real estate for the last 20 years, has the objections changed? And 40 years, has the objections changed? And the majority of them said no. So if you could just talk about that briefly, about the seller objections and how pretty much they've remained the same.
Well, first of all, thank you. This is such an important topic, and it's very much part of the planning of knowing what the concerns are going to be that you're going to address as you write your plan. All right, let's think about this for a minute. Does the seller still say, I want to think it over? Yes. Do they still often refer and say they have a friend in the business? Yes. Do they still say, I want you to cut your commission? Yes. Are they still considering going for sale by owner? Yes. Do they want a price higher than what you're suggesting to them? Yes. You ask for a 6-month listing. Do they still offer you, say, 90-day listing? Yes. See, these truthfully, and this is why your example is so good, these have been around for 50, 60, 70 years. And yes, there are new objections that do come on into play today. You know, are you actively involved in social media to promote my listing? Okay, that is something that will be asked of an agent. And of course, in today's world, the answer is yes, I am. And here's the social media that I use. So the truth is 90% of the objections we receive are going to always be the same. The challenge is not the objection. The challenge is learning the answers. And see, the truth is, sellers don't have seminars to work on new objections. They don't have to, because the ones they've had for years work so well. The problem is we can't get the agents to learn the answers, or at least be responsive. And my broker was great about this, because my broker would say, just give them a simple, straightforward, honest answer. So the seller says, will you cut your commission? No. Any other questions? And they go, no. Well, then would you sign the contract, please? I've got a friend in the business. You know, almost everybody does. But now that I'm here and you've seen what I have to say, does what I say make sense to get your home sold? Well, yes, it does. Would you sign the contract, please? See, so developing the strength internally is what's going to support your business plan. So here's the good news. First of all, I'm glad we got to do this and spend this time together today. I know it's important for all of us within the organization. At the same time, in about 10 minutes, I get to do this again for a big Century 21 company on the West Coast. So I'm going to say to all of you, first of all, most importantly, thanks for being a great customer. I mean, I've really enjoyed the relationship that I get to have with so many of you in the company, and we appreciate your responsiveness and your loyalty, and you're doing the things we ask. But second, let's make sure that this holiday season is safe. Let's make sure that everybody remains healthy. Let's follow all the protocols to make sure that the new year is going to start on the right foot for all of us. Anything that I can do to help any of you individually, just send me an email and I'll respond as quickly as I can. So with that being said, first of all, again, thanks to all of you for being with us. Alex and Shep, thanks for getting involved in this, what we call elite management program. And I hope that all the agents have a great December, a wonderful holiday. And I'll look forward to hopefully seeing all of you live at some point next year instead of on a webinar. It'd be a nice change of pace. So thanks for today.